Sagar and Crystal crash out on on dispensational Christians.
Yep.
Which is great.
And Christians in general.
Christians in general, but specifically dispensational Christians.
We think Iran is a theocracy?
Right.
What? All right, give me some mullah if this is the shit that's running my country.
Well, and here's the thing is like, it's funny, but it's
no, it's real.
serious.
Yeah, it's serious.
It's deadly serious. Go back to that text that Mike Huckabee sent to Trump, that Trump then publicized. The number of people in this government, including our ambassador to Israel and our Secretary of Defense, who have this like end times theology around this. Apparently, who knows how many senators and members of Congress share this view, as preposterous and absurd and disturbing as it is, offered by Ted Cruz, that you are commanded as a Christian to do what Bibi Netanyahu wants you to do.
Okay,
That's
now this is like, again, unless you're like a fringe dispensational, dude, I don't know anyone that's like Benjamin Netanyahu. He is God's man. Yeah, and whatever he says goes.
He looks like AI when he does press conferences.
He is extremely unpopular in Israel.
Yeah,
he won by the skin of his teeth. I got to Israel last time I went, 2022, the day after he was elected.
Really?
And it was a heaviness because he had to get the far right constituents to be a part of his cabinet, and the far rights are the ultra orthodox or the Tarantarans, and they don't serve in the military. They're not very loved by the rest of Israel, who has to serve 2 years in the military.
Yeah.
So this is a complicated thing to assume that like all Christians in America are on this, but to assume even Israel is on this.
Yeah, that's a fact. She's like, just because you believe in the Bible, now you believe you're commanded by Bibi Netanyahu. It's like, well, no one's really.
Position, okay? Then you couple that with the absolute religious zealot psychos that command so much power in Netanyahu's government, and you put that together with very clear indications that Trump himself has some sort of messiah complex after, narrowly escaping death in Butler, Pennsylvania. As if this isn't terrifying enough, the fact that you think that you have people involved, the most powerful people involved, who think they are commanded by the Bible or divinely destined to effectuate some outcome here, that terrifies me.
Oh, me too.
And
I hear that.
Yeah.
I understand. I understand why that would terrify her. I understand.
Call it the fear of God?
No. I think she thinks there's a bunch of psychotic people running the show. Right?
Yeah, no.
Right. And so I think it's like, okay, I understand why you would be scared. I think she misses some of the nuance of how divided Israel actually is.
Yeah.
Of the people in his own cabinet on the far right, the religious zealots she's talking about, of how unpopular they actually are.
Yeah.
Most Israelis serve in the military. If they're practicing Jews, they're very, very, very moderate. And you know what the sad part is? Like the parts that got attacked on October.
Yeah. They're like secular.
So there's secular little villages.
Yeah. I mean, it was like an EDM concert that also got shut up. It's like there's
probably
no Orthodox Jews going to an EDM.
It's probably
rave.
the most friendly people towards Palestine
are the ones that are right there.
The ones that got butchered and slaughtered geographically. The most anti-Bibi. That's how the conspiracy started up, where they ended up taking out. The military pulled back as much.
Oh, because they're like
troops there.
You want to be pro-Palestine? You'll see how it works out.
Yeah. So again, there's so many layers to this.
Yeah.
And I don't think they understand the geopolitical nuances that's in that country.
so I know the Christians went in on what specifically that passage in the Bible is. I hear from Grok that it most commonly Israel refers to collective descendants of Jacob's 12 sons, not the freaking nation state that was created in 1948 arbitrarily, by the way, by the United States of America. I'll let them do that. I just object to any biblical or
so that passage, which we looked at in the previous video, is talking about the descendants of Jacob, which is Israel.
Yeah.
Right? And Israel today, most people would say, yeah, there's a Jewish connection to that, but there's 12 tribes. Yep. In the scriptures, there ended up becoming less than 12 tribes, so some of those tribes lost. And so, she's props to her for looking up Grok and not like fully crashing out and just assuming that. Now, the idea that it was arbitrarily established by America, I mean, it was Britain that was a lot of it, but it was definitely the West that wanted to have some sort of refuge for Jewish people in light of the Holocaust and in light of them working on this. Hey, we want to go back to this land, which, say what you want, was not thriving and flourishing until Israel got there. Not to the degree and the development that it's had since Israel was established as a nation.
Religious text being used to justify wars or foreign policy or national policy whatsoever, that is where I get off, regardless of how you want to interpret.
I would actually agree with her here.
Okay.
I would say we're not a theocracy,
Yeah.
and we probably shouldn't be looking at interpretations from Genesis to establish modern geopolitical policy.
Yeah, there's nuclear bombs involved.
Yeah, there's nuclear bombs involved. That doesn't mean there's not very pragmatic reasons for not wanting Iran to have a nuclear bomb, for wanting to support Israel in that region as our only ally. That's Western. I think there's way better pragmatic arguments to be made for supporting Israel than there are theological ones.
Which you could say is God's provision over Israel by providing pragmatic reasons to support Israel.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if God is all powerful, all knowing that the nations will get to a point where like they have to make very linear decisions. It's like, well, now there's a really linear reason to keep them around.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, they're the only democracy in that part of the country, that part of the world.
Yeah.
A lot of this whole like open air prison in Gaza. Who do you think Gaza shares a border with?
Egypt. And,
Interesting. So you mean that Gaza's locked down, not just on the Israel side. Oh, but Egypt also is keeping Gaza. You know what I mean? Like, so all these half truths.
Is Egypt paying for the electricity or is that Israel?
No, that's Israel. Right? And so it's like so many of these half truths of like, they're keeping them in an open air prison. Listen, the people in Gaza got it hard, but don't pretend that Egypt is also not keeping those people at bay and away from their borders.
Yeah.
And keeping those borders locked down. Which I know that sounds shocking to everybody in America. That's like, open the borders. It's like, listen, man, the rest of the world doesn't function like this.
Yeah.
For any particular biblical line.
Apparently in this dispensationalism and end times eschatology, like these are, look, again, I am not qualified to talk about this and it's just not even really worth it. I would just look at it and be like, this is preposterous. Like you have a United States senator here. I mean, you know, this is, look, I guess to go all religious and 2006 atheist. So what did Christians do in 1947 before Israel existed? Like who were they commanded to, you know, to support? Like what the fuck?
That's actually a good question.
Yeah. I mean, I don't.
They support local Jewish businesses.
Christians acting within the spirit of Christ
have
always and should have always been friendly towards Jewish people.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't have to. Yeah.
Because Jesus was a Jew.
Yeah. I think it's kind of obvious. That
so
if there's not a nation of Israel, there's still Jewish people and they're obviously around.
Yes. So this idea that whether it was the Catholics, whether it was the Lutherans and Luther wilding out, whether it was whoever, name the stream that has been hostile towards Jews, in my opinion, have not been walking in accordance with God's laws.
Yeah.
You don't crash out on any group of people, but specifically Jewish people.
I can't even get my mind around this stuff. But you know, this maybe is I don't know. I know they don't listen, but I want people to know in Israel,
we listen. And they kept saying, I know these people don't watch the channel. I watch your guys' channel. I just think a lot of your guys' takes on this are really half-baked. Like to their takes, you know what their takes on anything Israel related reminds me of?
What?
When Kyle Rittenhouse ended up defending himself.
Yeah.
And whether he shouldn't have been there with a gun or not been there with a gun or drove across the city lines. When the media ran that story, teenagers in crowd, right? Like the way the story was ran, and then the way it actually happened on the video were two totally different things. And I feel like that's they are the left's version of that regarding that situation. That's how they speak about anything Israeli related. It's a very like one-sided, narrow view. I'll give you a quick example. They talked about how Israel recently was like, hey, they're punishing journalists for posting the buildings that are hit in Israel.
Yeah.
What they don't know, and they didn't even mention this, is that they said they asked everyone, the government asked everyone in Israel to not post pictures.
Of buildings.
You know why?
Because it was sending data back to the daggone.
It was
Iranians.
showing Iran how effective their daggone missils were.
Like, oh, that one hit, so now we know the location of the hospital.
Yeah. So to me, it's like, as a journalist, if you can't even be objective, like they went on this whole, and now they're punishing journalists and they're selling journalists, and you can't even objectively be like, okay, but to be fair, this is why they're saying this. They don't want Iran to know which places they've hit and not hit. They didn't even do that. So to me, I go, I think you kind of got brain rot on this one.
A little bit.
I think you got brain rot on this one. You know? Go ahead.
Let me take pictures, dude.
Laughing at you. The secular Jews who make up a huge portion of Israeli society, they think you're kooks and they think you're crazy. The secular, highly educated Jews who live in New York and Los Angeles and Philadelphia or whatever, they think they look at you like, you know, they're liberal Democrats. They think this is gross and weird.
This is probably accurate.
Yeah, but we would also go like a step further and be like, joke's on them.
Well, they also have a veil over their eyes and they don't know Jesus and they're hardened.
Yeah.
And
I don't feel embarrassed when an atheist looks at me and says, "Wow, you're kooky." It's like, that's not embarrassing to me.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, oh, I need to stop following the Bible because there's a liberal Jew that doesn't like me.
Right.
It's like that doesn't bother me whatsoever.
Right.
Yet, you know, the only thing they're really using you for is your biblical interpretation to support a foreign state.
No,
when I went to Israel,
they're also using them for tourists.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say right here.
Yeah.
I think 90% of the people on my plane were people like this, you know, from like evangelical churches. And if you have ever been to Jerusalem, I mean, you know, it's full on like earpiece in, pastor in the front, and they go to the cliff or wherever where the apocalypse is going to. I've seen this stuff with my own eyes.
I've never been to a clip where the apocalypse has happened. I went to the Sermon on the Mount. I've been to a lot of cool places. We didn't go to the clip where the apocalypse is happening.
I like how he's like, oh, these are a bunch of Christians that have just been baited by Jews. It's like, no, you're missing it. Our entire that's the home of our entire faith. So it's like we're not there because we're baited by Jews like it's a daggone like zoo where they're like just like, oh, this panda's been rescued. It's like, no, this is Golgotha. Like this is possibly the tomb of Jesus. Right. This is where they may have had this is Pontius Pilate's house. This is like those things come to life. And so it has nothing to do with the Jews. They just happen to be there. And so when the Jews go like, hey, by the way, we'll happily take your money to come here. We're like, sure, I'd happily pay you to be there.
Right.
And it's way more capitalist than it is like bait and switch.
Right.
Like an atheist can sell me that and I would still buy it. Because I'd be like, I don't care. I just want to see the thing that I read about in scripture.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's way more pragmatic. You're totally right.
It's not that deep.
You're totally right. Now, there may be a specific group, a part of Kufi and what in that group that have this sort of thing.
They believe it. They think it's serious. And when they're there, by the way, the Israeli government uses them as pawns for American support.
Absolutely.
Now, look, they're not going to listen because, you know, they're listening to their churches and all this other. But the one thing I would at least ask is, if you're religious and you have pride in your own beliefs, shouldn't you wonder if you're being taken advantage of? I promise you, I've met these people. They think you're a joke. They're laughing at you and using you as a tool to support their own.
Again, we've already conceded that. 2, you're also using your anecdotal experience of going to Israel. 3, we think they're a joke. They don't know Jesus. Feelings mutual. You know what we did to our secular? You know what we did to our secular tourist guy who I still stay in touch with? His name's Ron, sweetheart.
Right.
I had him on my channel. You know what we did? Told him about Jesus.
Yeah, hello.
The whole time. That's all we wanted. We were just evangelizing to him.
Yeah.
Yes, Sagar. Yes. Yes, you're right. And it is a mutual feeling that like, yo, y'all don't know Jesus. And so since we're here, we want to get to it. Right?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Country and their foreign policy. That's really degrading, in my opinion.
I mean,
you know?
what
okay.
kind of
Now this is where, again, Crystal just shows her hand.
Yeah.
religion would command you to endlessly support with no criticism a country that is actively doing a genocide? Like,
here's the issue with her question. One, the presupposition that anyone that is not waving a Free Palestine flag is endlessly supporting a genocide. One, false presupposition. Presupposition number 2, in your worldview, Mr. Atheist, Mr. Secular person, there's nothing wrong with a genocide.
Yes.
You have no moral framework to say a genocide. Why is a genocide wrong?
Come on.
And where were you guys, just for the record, with the camera on me, hey, where were you when 100,000 Armenians were displaced from Azerbaijan 2 weeks before October 7th? Why didn't I see breaking points talking about the genocide that just happened? It's interesting how selective we are with our outrage. When there was 100,000 Christians who were expelled from Azerbaijan, Armenian Christians, and very few people covered it. Why were you guys not outraged then? Why were you guys not talking about that then? It's so interesting how you guys are so selective with your empathy regarding what's happening in Gaza, but you have no grounds. If you're an atheist or a secular person, you have no grounds on any sort of morality of what isn't a genocide. Because why is a genocide even wrong to you? You have no absolute standard for right and wrong. So you're sitting here crashing out and virtue signaling of how can you, when most of your coverage of Gaza has been completely one-sided. And when I had somebody that was from the IDF on my channel, I asked them why the IDF was sloppy and why them hurting protesters in Gaza shouldn't shock you when they shot their own daggone
hostages.
hostages.
Oh man, that's dark.
You think in the fog of war, these kids, and I say kids because they're younger than me or you. They're younger than many of the people, 18, 19, 20, 21, 20, on the front lines of war, in the fog of war. They're their own hostages waving white flags. This happened. And when I sat with Emmanuel, I asked him about this. How does this happen? Right? And so you think they're doing that, there's not going to be constant mistakes. And then when you get into this, well, they're just opening fire on random groups of civilians. And that's how the headline reads. And then you go look at the video. You go look at the video, and there's chaos and all kinds of crazy stuff happening, and they don't know what's going on. And there's rocks being flown. Like, it's never as cut and dry as the way this like brain rot, all Israel bad.
Yeah.
So at least have just scales. And if you're going to talk about genocide, at the very least, keep the same energy. Keep the same energy when it's happening to Christians, and you guys didn't do anything to cover it. You didn't talk about it. Because you have a very specific, perfect, oppressed, marginalized group that's easy to champion. When in reality is this part of the world is very complicated, and it's very delicate, and the status quo clearly hasn't been working, and it's not going to get any better anytime soon.
Come on.
So miss me with the at least don't let your religion cover up a genocide. No one is saying that we should have a genocide. No Christian is like, yay, right? I mean, maybe there's some pretty crazy Christians out there doing that, but no Christian is celebrating that. Most Christians are like, yo, don't civilians. Keep civilians bad. Don't do the civilian thing. Leave the civilians alone. Okay, well, they're putting civilians allegedly in hospitals, and there's some proof for that and some proof not for that. I don't know, right? But it's weird. It's weird that when all of a sudden an Israeli hospital gets bombed, there's no heart for them because, well, this is the world that they created. This is the bed that they get to lay in. So miss me with, like, you guys don't have a moral framework to even say a genocide is bad, let alone clearly give us objective information of what's happening in the ground there, and crash out on Christians as if we all believe the same thing. We don't. Most Christians don't hold to this dispensational theology. Catholics don't. Eastern Orthodox don't. Protestants don't. Most Protestants are covenantal theology people. So this is just, it's ridiculous. And instead of having a conversation with a Christian or with someone that's pro-Israel and saying, hey, talk to me, explain to me this, it's easier to just crash out into completely hyper-generalize this sort of stuff. Not understanding that you're creating the culture that you think Israel has created against other people. You're doing the same thing against Israel. That's what's happening. And the truth is that this is a messy, complicated situation. Israel having made a lot of mistakes, oftentimes against their own hostages, and it's a mess, and it's going to stay a mess, and it's sad. And no one's wanting to see kids starve. No one is wanting that. People are trying to get aid there. All my friends who are in the region are trying to get help to those parts. But at the same time, these people feel like Iran is an existential threat. They want to wipe out Israel. They've said so. They've said so repeatedly. So listen, if someone tells you they don't want you to exist and they're going to wipe you out the first moment they get, might want to believe them. Might want to take them seriously. That doesn't mean that Israel gets to do whatever they want. That's not what I'm saying. Most of my Israeli friends, like friends who live in Israel, want to see peace made. They want to see life amongst the Palestinians. They want to see equal rights. They want to see these things happen. They have tried to see this happen in the 90s when Israel was way more liberal and progressive. And unfortunately, it hasn't. It hasn't. And I hope that this isn't connected to the end of days. I hope this stuff being ushering in the apocalypse is wrong. I hope that this situation in Iran gets cleaned up. But conflating this as like, yeah, anyone who says that Israel has a right to exist, which, by the way, that's what Zionism actually is. For those of you guys who are like, Zionism bad. Zionism just means that the Jewish people have a rite of passage to return to the land of their ancestors. So if you have an issue with Zionism, you should also not be out here caping for Indigenous Peoples Month. You shouldn't be out here caping for the colonizers are bad. No, if these people don't have a right to return, then why are you talking about any native group from where they're from? And the data and the DNA, the genetics show that yes, the folks that are back in this part of the world are also from this part of the world. That That doesn't mean that it's just white Ashkenazi Jews from Brooklyn that are there. Anyone that's been to Israel will tell you that a big chunk of Israelis are indistinguishable from the Arabs because they're Sephardic Jews. They're darker skinned Jews, right? And so again, like it's just frustrating hearing someone talk about something that they've never been to the region. They clearly don't have friends who live there who aren't supporters of any of this sort of stuff, or friends that are supporters. But most of my friends aren't fans of, my friends in Israel, they're not fans of Benjamin Netanyahu. They're not fans of the current administration. They weren't fans when they got elected. This situation is a mess, and hopefully it gets better, but it may not. It may not. And hopefully America doesn't get dragged into a war with Iran. Brand new Occupy Till I Come 60-day devotional has arrived, taking you through the entire narrative of Scripture in 60 days, 35 days in the Old Testament, 25 days in the New Testament, with custom interactive journal prompts for every single day. This is a great way to have a structured devotional, reignite your passion for the Word of God. This is something I wish I had 20 years ago, 10 years ago, when I was traveling a lot doing music, that could just take me through a general narrative of Scripture and help me be interactive and reflect on what it is that I read. That is why there's a journal built into the devotional with daily prayer request section to also document my prayers. So whether you've been walking with Jesus for a while or you're new to the faith, go to blessgod.shop right now to pick it up. All right, I'll see you over there. After the incredible success of our Bless God prayer journal, many of you guys began to ask for something that had a planner. And so we combined our Bless God prayer journal with a brand new leadership planner that jam-packs the same things from our prayer journal with a planner, goal setting, leadership meeting, and notes. With the next pages, you can see different sections right along here of this leadership planner where you can start out with actionable goals, 12 months of calendar, our original prayer journal prompts, our leadership journal with the proven problem solution framework, and of course, just free write notes. This leadership planner is based off of Matthew 25, 14 through 30, which of course is the parable of the talents. The vision of the planner is to help you make the most of your time, talent, and treasure. Head over to blessgod.shop and get yours.